Hello.
Hi.
Oh, hi. Hi, guys. Welcome to another episode of Live here on Keystroke Medium. I'm Josh Hayes, here with Chuck Manley and Scoot Moonay. Hello. Good morning. Good afternoon, wherever you are. Welcome, man. We said like 2 weeks ago we're going to do it every Monday, and then we skipped last Monday. So sorry about that. I apologize. I blame that on Chuck and Scott both. Let's see.
Life has no respect for my podcasting schedule.
No respect.
Say that.
No
None
respect.
whatsoever.
No
You
respect.
gotta say that like that googly eye guy that like looked two different directions when he was talking. I don't get no respect, whatever his name is. I can't remember.
Rodney Dangerfield.
Rodney Dangerfield. Yeah.
Let's see.
No respect even now because people can't remember his name.
Yeah, that's right. 100%. Yeah. Whoops.
Whoopsies.
Let's see. Corey Gillum has the first comment of the day, or the first comment that's not Rick Partlow. So thank you for that. You get the golf clap of appreciation. Charlie is in North Carolina today. Welcome.
Not for long.
Guy Anthony DeMarco had the first like. Wink. And Tom Hoddle is here. Hello. Welcome. Who else is here? Lou's here. Ken's here. Ken just had his 50th birthday. Happy birthday, Ken.
Welcome to the AARP years, my friend.
You're older than I am. Let's see. Who else is here?
I have it on good authority that Ken broke a workout milestone. I don't know if, I'll just say he benched 300 pounds.
Dude. I mean, that's pretty legit.
Which is like a lot. Yeah.
My
That's
max
basically
ever
me.
was 275, and I'm pretty sure I ruined my elbow when I did that.
Yeah.
Let's see. Walt is here. What's up, Walt? Walt Robillard. Welcome to the show. There's a lot. Like I tell you, no respect. I died.
That's a classic.
They told me to go to hell.
That's a classic Dangerfield right there.
Nice.
That's awesome.
Yep.
We're just gonna have a kind of a crazy free for all today on the show, like we have been doing here recently. Because you know what, those are the type of shows that we like having. We've got a couple people kind of lurking in the winds, waiting to kind of confirm where they're going to come on the show at. I think Casey Azell is going to come on. She's got a new book out, and we're trying to work out some times with her, but it's hard since she's in Japan, and it's really hard to schedule around that.
Yeah, it was like 4 a.m. or something when she did that last one. It was crazy.
That was pretty brutal.
Dude, if we ever did a show at 4 a.m, it would literally just be me like drinking coffee. I wouldn't say a word. Like screaming me drinking coffee.
Just walking back from the roulette table in Vegas at 4 a.m. That'd be an interesting show.
Been there. So let's see. Let's go through updates, man. Chuck, you go first, dude, because you always have like the most legit updates.
He has a collared shirt on, so he's clearly the most prepared for this podcast.
No, I have to go to a stupid parent sports kid meeting thing in a little while, but that's the only reason I'm wearing adult clothes. Let's see. A lot of softball. Son had his homecoming dance the other night, so I was teaching him to tie ties and stuff like that. I am so very close. I know I say this every damn time.
Define close.
I am so close to the end of Jack Dark 2. Hopefully I'll have it done into the month, as long as things don't keep interrupting me. Let's see. That's really about it, guys. Just, it's always family and books with me. It's nothing exciting happened. So, although last week I did have to cancel because there was a carpool meltdown and I had to go save the day because that's what I do.
Did you do it with like a Superman cape on? Like,
goddamn right I did.
Jump out of the car and go, dun, dun, dun.
You're welcome. But yeah, no, somebody's car broke down. I had to go get kids and help people, and it was fun. That's about it, though.
Oh, hey, looky here. Rick showed up finally. Rick, you're like
wow.
Evan's comment today.
Like,
you're really, I mean, you're
literally like
really
first
dropping
he's
the
last.
ball.
Look, he makes a decision
Really?
to leave Florida, he sells his house, and then he shows up late to the show. This is a
Okay.
downward trend, Rick. It's
Just-
a downward trend. What about you,
Yeah.
Scott? What have you been up to, man?
Oh, well, I guess last Sunday we had Craig Martell came in his Drive Across America thing. Josh and I went out and hosted that. I was in charge. I was the point of contact, his fancy term for a guy who gets reservations and whatnot. So but I set that up. I didn't put a lot of effort into it just because, well, I don't know. Long story short, but basically, I was really nervous about the venue that I picked was going to be bad because I picked the hotel that Craig stayed at, and then I picked a restaurant very close to him, so it'd be easy and convenient because he's driving all over the place. And I went to Chicken and Pickle, which is a very large place with lots of festivities. It has like pickle courts and activity rooms and a huge, open dining area and just all kinds of space. We get there, and I'm like worried that it's going to be loud for a conversation between a bunch of writers who are all introverts. So we walk up there. There's a live band. There's like 400 people playing pickleball. Get inside. It's a Kansas City Chiefs game going on, which in Wichita is crazy, and a DJ. And I'm like, this is not going to work. And I was we went upstairs. We got a place upstairs, and it was quiet. Josh got him to turn down the music up there, and it all worked out great. And I think everybody had a good time. But yeah, so that went well. It was really cool to see Craig and listen to all these people talk. Didn't know so many writers lived right in this area. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, there was a couple that are from Wichita and then several from like kind of Oklahoma area. Dan Wood,
Mm-hmm.
I think this is Dan Wood, right?
Dan Wood showed up, yeah.
He came up from Draft to Digital and hung out. One of the lady authors we met, KT Hannah is her name. She's from Australia. She's really nice lady to talk to, really smart. We're going to try to get her on the show. Because she's been doing a kind of a long running sci-fi series, and now she's doing some collab stuff too. And it was really fun to hear her talk about her writing journey in that collab. I think that would be kind of fun to talk about.
Super cool. So that was really good. I've done a bunch of writing this week. I decided to work on 3 projects at once. And like my current my current process is I write for
not at all.
I write for 2 hours. Well, because the kids are in school and my wife went to work full time. So, except for the days when I'm dying of sleep deprivation, which is 4 out of 7, but for 3 days, I'll get up, I'll write for 2 hours on one project, take a nap, drink a big glass of water so I don't sleep for too long because I have to pee, and then write for 2 more hours and then do it a third time. That's my goal. So
that's an interesting alarm clock method.
Yeah, it works great for me because I can't sleep very long anyway. But if I drink a big glass of water, I definitely ain't sleeping for very long. But I drink probably 2 gallons of water a day because I'm ADD like that.
Gotcha.
So
water.
Yeah, and I do the same thing when we go out to bars because I don't drink that much. But like we went to that bar there, and I was like about 4 beers in about 10 minutes. I'm like, oh shit, this isn't water. I better stop. I'm not conditioned for this type of abuse. But so that was cool. Trying to think some other cool, interesting things that have happened around here, but just not a lot. We're building a house, so that's a little bit nerve wracking, but we've wanted to for a long time. Going to move closer over to where Josh is.
When that gets built, I'm just going to randomly come and sit on your deck and write.
Well,
I'm not even going to tell you I'm coming. I'm just going to show.
Wait, can you get to where they're framing it out and stuff?
Yeah.
Okay, what you do is you go over there at night and you write obscene shit on the 2x4s inside the walls.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I did this to a buddy of mine when he was building his house. Me and another friend, we just went over there and wrote the most disgusting stuff we could think of on the 2x4s. So he knows that shit's inside his walls the rest of his life.
You know what's awesome is to get a get remote control like beepers and like put those on the things like everywhere and then just randomly go click it and they get beeping all the way through that. Like that would
maybe one of our favorite things in Squad years ago was a fart machine. You put one of those in there.
Or get like wire a Bluetooth, like the electricians there, like wire Bluetooth speakers into the walls, and then so they're wired into electricity. You could just like tap your phone in and like send the most ridiculous stuff into your house. I
think we should not do that. I think we should skip.
I'm writing all this down.
There is a lake over there, so it's a tiny little lake, but it's just big enough you can like put a jet ski in it. So I'll have Josh bring over his giant ass boat, and we'll go out there and we'll go like 10 feet, and then it'll be like that's all the space we'll have. And then we can float out there and write. That'll be fun.
Yeah,
as well. But yeah, good times. Other than that, not too much else going on over here.
Nice. I am working still on Savage Stars, not Sentinel, not whatever the hell I'm calling it this week. I got a lot of good writing done on it last week. Now that I've kind of got in the groove of the police work up in Claflin, last week I was up there. I was able to do a lot of dictation, and then I know I've said it before. I've got this Remarkable that you can hand write on, and then you can convert all of that to text and email it to yourself. And
that's the best.
Whatever the hell of valor.
Whatever the hell is of valor.
That's
there
right.
you go.
100%. Write that down. Somebody give Tom $5 for a royalty fee.
Royalty trademark.
And William Tyler, and a lot of TikTok. That's right. And a lot of TikTok. That's fine.
Yes,
Dude, I
we
hate
have-
you for telling me about TikTok.
Yes.
That is
Great
such a time suck.
Oh, dude, I scroll and I'm like, 5 hours later. But I got that Remarkable, and it's actually a lot easier to write on that tablet than it is to like, because I don't know if you've ever sat in the front seat of a cop car. I'm sure you sat in the back, Chuck, but if you sat in the front seat of a cop car,
Not as far as you know.
it's super hard to type. There's not a lot of room to kind of mess around.
Especially with all the doodads on your stormtrooper belt you have to wear.
100%. So this Remarkable, actually, like it's really easy to write on, and because there's nothing happening, I literally sit on the side of the road with my radar on, and I sat there for 3 hours the other day. So I'm running radar for 3 hours, but also I'm making a whole bunch of notes on the story. I got about 20 pages of notes that kind of converted into, I think it was like 2,000 words from one day, and then I got a couple thousand from another day. So I'm being productive while I'm up there, and that's helping a lot. Let's see what else. I'm reading this book, and this is one of the things I want to talk about today, House of Assassins. I'm actually listening to it, but I realized the other day that I had a signed copy, and it's a prop. But this book is super good. If you haven't listened or read Son of the Black Sword, which is the first book in the series by Larry Correia, it's super good fantasy. It's not like George R.R. Martin fantasy. It's not grimdark, but it's also not like high fantasy either. It's kind of
Or action adventure fantasy.
Yeah, it's action adventure. It's not quite grimdark, but there are a lot of things that you're like, man, that's kind of fucked up. Like, ugh. But it's super good, and I'm almost done with that. I think there's one more book, and I'll get it listed to. That's the other thing I'm doing up there is driver when I'm driving around. See, Claflin is about as big as my neighborhood, and so it doesn't take very long to drive around. But as I'm driving in circles, I'm listening to audiobooks, and I'm knocking this one out of the park. It's super good. I got some really cool news. I know the other day I mentioned some super secret news that I couldn't talk about, and now I've got some even more super secret news that I can't talk about. But I might
talk about it even less
or sooner than the other super secret news that I got. And it's not life-changing news, but it's certainly news that is it's up there, and it's super cool. And hopefully everything works out the way I think it's going to work out, and I'll be able to share that here in about a month or so, probably. Something that I had never thought of. Yeah, Scott's like, I know.
I know the secret.
It's like this would be cool to do, or what if I did this? But to then have it happen to you, that was pretty slick. So kid says, I thought the working Sentinel book title was My Butt Hurts from the Lake of
Valor. That's a good one. That was probably the last show we did.
We should do a show on the lake.
We should.
Did you see
they got Wi-Fi out there?
Did you see Partlow's return on our burn? He says the show time changes so much he can't keep track.
That's true.
That never stopped him before. I invalidate your excuse.
Sorry.
Disregard your excuse.
I blame that on
Josh.
Yeah. Whoops.
Blame that on Ultimate Freedom.
I'm trying to think anything else that I got going on. Not a whole lot. I'm getting back into the swing of now that I've got my head back into police work again. I'm making the best of my time up there, and knocking out some good words. So that's about it for me. I hope everybody else is having good words in the chat. One of the things I wanted to talk about today were like thoughts on so I saw this meme the other day, and it was, I can't remember who posted it. It was somebody in our circle of friends or writers on Facebook, and it was a comment, I think on Reddit, that a reader had put on, like they were commenting about this book, and this author had killed off a character, and this reader, her comment was, I hope that I can meet this author in person and give her a hug around the neck with a rope because she killed this character. And of course there was some back and forth, and
there were people triggered people.
It's interesting in 2 points. One, that the author was able to create a character that this person connected with so deeply. But two,
maybe she's just homicidal maniac.
Maybe that's a little spooky. I don't know.
Well, I mean, to me, the way you just, obviously I didn't read it, but just the way you just described it, I agree. If I had been that author, I'd have been like, well done me, because
right.
But I don't know. That kind of sounds like an attempt at gallows humor that went bad.
Yeah, I think that's probably a joke.
Yeah. It could have been.
Yeah.
Your couch moved, by the way, Chuck.
Rachel Hawkins. Rick, was it on one of Rachel's books? I think it was on one of her books. I can't remember. Rachel Hawkins, who's in our writers group. It was just like some people took it as really like off-putting. Like you're
right. Yeah,
gallows
I could see that.
But you're right. I think as an author, I would think that is a huge compliment. Specifically, like I love getting compliments about Strikers War, where people are like, I'm not crying, you're cutting onions or something like that. And
you made me cry.
It was okay. So it's Rachel's book on Wattpad. Okay. So when I get comments that people cry at the end of my book, or they have an emotional response, I don't know that I've ever had an emotional response like that over a book character. I think I've had some, watching movies, but I think that emotional experience is kind of different. To me personally, it's different from reading a book.
It's hard for me to imagine a fan that legitimately has some malicious intent, because people talk like that all the time. I mean, you hear parents, I'm going to kill you, to their kids. They don't really mean they're going to kill
exactly.
Well, no, I was talking about having like crying or
crying.
Or just that strong emotional reaction.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can remember a couple of times I read something and I was kind of gut punched. I've never actually shed tears, I don't think, but usually when I felt gut punch, it's when something just came out of the blue that I just totally did.
Probably the only time I felt like severe actual hostility was when I read I can't even say it, the Malazan. What is that? That big giant long.
Oh, the Malorian and the Bulgariad.
Yeah, when I tried, no,
you're talking about Malazan, Book of the Fallen.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. I read that. I wanted to kill somebody. I wasn't just sure who, because I couldn't figure out, because it was long, rambling, and I just felt like I'd lost.
That's when I get really emotional, is when they piss me off and I get frustrated with the book. But that's a different kind of.
Yeah.
The last time that happened to me was when I was reading a lot of David Baldacci, and I finally just had enough of his incompetent dialogue.
Yeah.
I mean,
that made me die a little bit.
Your reaction is basically like a. Not like, oh, Dumbledore died, spoiler alert, and you're like, oh, I don't know what I'm gonna do that Dumbledore died, because you remember all the stuff that happened. Like, if social media had been a thing back then, I think that would have blown up social media when that book came out and
broke the internet.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah, no, I think that was most likely a compliment, basically somebody that, like, this character deeply touched me, I'd like to kick your ass for killing my favorite character, that type of thing.
Right. Yeah.
And stuff like that. Now, having said that, I could see a lot of people, even people that's not involved, like not even Rachel or the author in whatever hypothetical book we're talking about, somebody just reading the review nowadays could be very triggered that somebody would dare say something so homicidal, you
I
know, even in
remember. I
jest.
remember watching an interview with the guy that I can't think of his name. He died a few years back. The guy that wrote the Mitch Rapp books.
Vince Flynn.
Vince Flynn.
No,
Yeah,
yeah.
Vince Flynn. Yeah, I saw him in an interview, and he was getting death threats because he killed off Rapp's wife. I mean, like just legit death threats. He said he'd never forget the first one he got because he was just like, he said, all I could really do was look at it and laugh. I called my wife in there and I'm like, look at this guy.
He wants to
He's
kill
gonna
me.
kill me because of this. I wrote this.
It seems like a gross overreaction.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of crazy that you know, the concept of internet ambiguity or being able to hide and you know, you wouldn't say these things to anybody in person, like, and
Right.
and the fact that, you know, people get into arguments about it's just everything on social media now, but it's not just limited to politics. It's movies, it's books, it's book characters, and it's interesting to me that there are not a majority of readers, but there are some readers and even viewers of movies and TV shows that get so emotionally wrapped into the characters that they're watching, that if something happens that they didn't expect or that they didn't want, they're like, I hate this. I hate it.
Yeah.
Well, I think there's a lot of people out there that, for whatever reason, are so utterly dissatisfied with their life that the escapism people like us provide through our work sort of, it gives them a refuge they don't want to give up. And the minute you put any kind of crack in that refuge, something that's almost too real, that's going to remind them that it's not real, like the sudden death of a character that you love,
Right?
Killing off a basket full of puppies.
It's just, you know, that's, you know, we throw that word trigger around a lot, but these days, but, you know, back when I was working in psych back in the day, trigger meant somebody fucking lost it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that some people are just in a headspace where if their refuge is threatened that way, they lose it.
Oh yeah, I could say that. I like my imaginary place best. Obviously, Rick has a comment in there. He has the same response I did. The most emotional response he gets is from when they waste their time, which is something we as authors can avoid. You know, writing crap that wastes people's time. That's like cardinal sin.
Well, but then I think too,
you just have to pay attention to what you're doing.
A lot of that could be subjective, and
also,
and what I mean, like when I said earlier about a character dying and people getting pissed off and leaving the book, that I'm not talking about the quality of the writing or the way in which the story is told, but the fact that a character dies ruins something. But I mean, what Rick's talking about, I think anybody can, every single author has dealt with that on one level or another, and I think that's just the burden of having people read your stuff.
Yeah.
Also,
well,
like,
you never know how somebody's going to react.
100%.
Also, like Ken's comment, but you have heard of me, the Jack Sparrow reference.
That's right. You're literally the worst author in the entire world. I'm like,
an author.
I want to get move on to it, but this comment's really cool. Patricia Gillum says, my dad worked for one of the printers for Harry Potter. They were kept under armed guard, and the majority of people could not look at the pages for longer than a few seconds. That's actually pretty cool.
I want to know what those guards orders were.
You kind of know you've made it when your books have to be put under armed guard while they're being printed.
I want to know what if the guards had like orders like, all right, if they read past chapter 75, start shooting to kill.
That's it.
Yeah.
Tase them if they hold the page too long.
Well, hey, do you remember when the first of the new Star Wars came out? It was The Force Awakens. And if you haven't seen it, mute and I'll wave my hands and do a funny face if you don't want any spoilers. But I remember going to that movie and I remember kind of trying to avoid social media at that time, but not really, because I didn't really care about spoilers. But like I remember going to the theater, and I remember as soon as Kylo Ren killed Han Solo on the bridge, I was like, my immediate reaction was like, I cannot believe no one spoiled this, because I waited for like a week and a half to go see the movie, and I could not believe that no one said anything about it. But even more than that, like everybody involved in the production of the movie, like she's saying the book is printed under armed guard, but everybody involved with the movie, nobody said anything. Nobody had any inclination that was going to happen.
Remember when we had the guy on that was writing for Falcon and Winter Soldier, and he talked about all the security procedures?
Oh, right.
Like, it was like behind 5 locked doors, and if you mentioned it in the lobby, you got in trouble, and I mean, I could see how they lock it down. I'm surprised freaking Harrison Ford didn't spoil it himself, because he's wanted to kill that guy for 40 years.
Yeah. Well, even then there was a lot of people that got really mad about that. I think I was more mad as the sequels came out. I was more mad the way that they wrote Luke's character.
Yes.
To kind of give him like kind of the flippant, like, I don't even give a shit anymore type of attitude than I was. And I wasn't really even mad that he killed Han.
Honestly, I think that was the director's fuck you to the whole franchise. Yeah, that's just the way I felt about that.
Rinzor the Red says, "Hi, what's up, Rinzor? How are you? Leo's here. Late but fashionable," and that's pretty debatable. True. Actually. Guy says, I'm a couple minutes late, so I'm listening at 1.5 speed to catch up. Josh sounds like he drank 12 cups of double caffeine coffee. Interestingly enough, I've had a pot and a half today, so if I said today, it's definitely my fault.
Yep.
So I'm wondering, we're talking about all this, and I'm wondering about emotional responses from readers and what we kind of push. How do we form that legitimate emotional response and then keep the reader like from tossing it? Like, is there anything that we can set up? I know when I write my characters, if I know I'm going to kill one, I legitimately try to make that character likable, or I want the reader to really enjoy having that character on the page, because when I rip that character away, I want the reader to go, ugh.
Yeah, you want to feel it.
Attention to that, and it's kind of it's the opposite of having a red shirt, right? I do red shirts too, and I'll just kill this person or kill that person, but I'm not trying to elicit a response from those. But the ones I really want a response in, I delve really deep, and it wasn't something that I thought about prior to a couple of years ago. Actually, probably prior to Strikers War, I hadn't purposely thought about setting up the death. I just figured, they're going to die, and I know I like this character, so probably, hopefully, somebody will like the character too, and they'll be upset when he dies. But in Strikers War, I from the beginning, I knew one was going to die, and so for the beginning, I set it up as, when it happens, it's going to be a terrible loss, because I think probably
that was the whole point of that whole series, is they were all supposed to be how do you say,
posthumously. Yeah. Yeah. And that is probably my number one comment in that book, of people that read that book, is they were torn apart when that character died. But it wasn't like rage filled, I can't believe you killed that character. It was a, holy crap, that character did something really cool, and it touched me emotionally. And
it wasn't personal.
Well, and that story.
Some people take it personally.
I think they took it personal, but it was a positive emotional response. They weren't happy that the character died, but they could feel the sacrifice that he made was worth what happened to him.
The story, Strikers War, lived up to expectations. That was the story. The story was true to itself and things like that. Yeah. So that's the biggest thing, is fulfill expectations. Chuck hit on another thing to make people feel like you've wasted their time, is really shitty dialogue.
Yeah.
I think no action for extended periods of time. It doesn't have to be like stuff blowing up and people running around, but there has to be some sort of dramatic tension, which is basically action. Even if you're just thinking about stuff or talking, it's still action. And so nothing happening for the first long portion of the book. Super confusing, wandering narratives. That's what I had about the book of the Malalarzablarzan, or whatever however you say it, is that It was so hard to follow, and nothing happened, and it went nowhere. And at the end, it really didn't matter. And I was like, "That's stupid." And it was like 900 pages long too. So that was terrible.
I saw an article a couple of months ago that some people were talking about this book by Steven Erikson, and I don't remember which book it was about, but there was a long. Of course, I don't go on Reddit, and so when people say there's a big Reddit outbreak about something, I take it kind of with a grain of salt. And this happened a little while ago, but basically, what happened is there is a scene in this book where the way people were reacting to it on Reddit made me think this was the worst thing that has ever happened. Literally, in the
literally,
not literally in
literally.
There you go. That's the one I want. And it was worse than anything anybody's ever read, and it was disgusting and horrible and blah blah blah. And so much so that the author actually like responded in like a big long response, and I can't remember if he apologized or whatever, but it was a big thing, of course, in that circle, right? So I bought the book and then basically found what chapter they were talking about and read it. And spoiler alert, again, if you've read Steven Erikson, I don't even remember the character's name. I don't know any context for what's happening. I just know what happened in this scene. And basically this scene, this lady gets tied down and she's being punished for something. And I don't know what she's being punished for, but basically they hobble her. They cut her feet off, like from the top down. And so she's left with these stumps, and they like cauterize the wound or something like that. Mm-hmm. It wasn't particularly graphic, and it wasn't particularly shocking, especially in the context of grimdark, because this is what this book was. It was grimdark.
Oh yeah.
It was obviously like a dark, violent fantasy, and a lot of crazy, kind of ugly shit happened, even in real life back in Middle Ages and stuff like that. So
yes,
I was like, man, I don't know why this elicited such an emotional response, and I wonder if I had read the book on top of that, to get the context of what was happening, maybe. But I'm glad that I have not yet had a huge negative response to any scenes that I've written, but I know that I try to make a reader feel it's like movie directors, the music and the dialogue and the cinematography, it all works together to make the audience either feel scared or happy or sad. I try to really kind of work that stuff into the manuscript as much as I can. Leo Vaquero says how Scott Moon and Richard Fox wrote Opal's death in Terran Strike Marines is a great example of how to lay down a character emotional but satisfying.
Yeah, there's a lot of people who are not happy about that, and I actually fought against that for a long time. I wanted Hoffman and Opal to retire and go become farmers on some remote world and stuff like that, but he said, nope, Opal has to die. I want to win an award. So he killed Opal.
I think that while you were writing that, you had finished Terran Strike Marines, I think, before we finished Terra Nova, and I wanted to kill off a character in Terra Nova, and Richard wouldn't let me because he'd already killed off one in the Strike with you, and then he did another one in the Iron Dragoon series that he was writing. So like, I can't do it anymore. We've already
can't kill anymore. Opal was a big one because I think Opal, of the books I wrote with Richard Fox, I think Opal was probably most people's favorite character. He was a big, anyway. Anybody who's read it knows what I'm talking about.
What's ironic about a lot of your characters, Scott, is that the most remembered or remarkable characters that you write are the big dumb ones.
Yeah, that's true. That actually is a fact.
Because Opal is a much loved character. And then what's his name from Dark Landing is
Ungwaluk,
and the pig dog. So
the pig dog.
Bravo, Scott, for writing huge emotional big dumb character.
Yep. Trying to think of some others I got, but I'll come back around to that. But so
go ahead, Scott.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, I tried to, when I was writing the Valor series, I tried to come up with actually put off killing some characters because I didn't feel like it would be emotionally satisfying to kill them. And even one that I killed in the last book, he wasn't a main character. He was a kind of a secondary, almost a tertiary character. And I killed him. And the difference between killing him and then killing my character in Striker's War is that I didn't want the focus of the reader to be on the emotional loss of his death. I wanted the reader's energy to be on the rage that my character that survived felt after that. And so I wrote it completely different, almost wrote the death kind of like off page, like it happens, but it happens that fast. And then we move on and we deal with the ramifications of that. Because I know when I wrote it, I didn't feel like an emotional loss and I didn't want the readers to, and I think I made it work. But there's just so like kind of depends on how you want the reader to feel about a character dying, how you write it in the manuscript. I don't know that I've mastered it, but I know that since writing those 2 books, I really think about ahead of time if I'm going to kill a character and how do I need to create that plot line. How about getting let's see. Ken says, how about the emotion of getting past the all is lost moment?
The lack moment.
Like in the climax of a book when you're up in the tree is now set on fire, and now there's a lightning storm coming and you're going to die, and how you get out of that, and you have that kind of relief when they get out of the tree and they survive, and you have that feeling. It's interesting because as a reader, I don't read for that moment. Like how do I say this? For instance, I'm reading this House of Assassins book right now, and I think I know what's happening. And my enjoyment from the book is getting to the end and either figuring out if I'm right about what's happening or if I'm wrong. But either way, I enjoy the book. It's kind of like oh fuck, take a shot. It's the Brandon Sanderson Journey Before Destination thing, where I really, except for Stephen King, I really like the the journey of getting there. But for me, especially in this book, it's figuring it out before it happens. And then going, yes, I figured it out, and not so much as they made it out. Because I don't know, like you write so many books and you read so many books, you can kind of tell.
My wife hates it when I do that in movies because when I was growing up, I was never the guy that tried to figure them out. I really didn't enjoy people like, well, I figured out the twist, and they had all these friends growing up and they would always say that. And I always hated that. It's not why I was there. I was just there to just kind of go with the flow and enjoy the movie. But now, since I've learned, especially since I read the Terry Brooks book on the structures and how it pertains to movies, that I will literally just say, this is going to happen in 5 minutes, and I'll tell her exactly what's going to happen, and then it'll happen. And she hates that.
I do the same thing to my wife. It drives her insane.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Because once because certain things have to happen in basically in most story structures.
Yeah.
They might happen a little bit different way. They might happen slightly different place, but for a story to feel fulfilled, 99% of the time, certain things will happen.
I'm a big fan of whodunits, and we'll like watch the murder mystery type TV shows and stuff. And she says I have like this expression I get when I figure it out, but I've learned not to say it out loud. I'll just kind of go. She says I'll kind of go, oh.
Is she like, shut up, Chuck?
No, she says I just get a lot of side eye at that point.
Yeah. So when you're talking about the all this lost moment from a writer's perspective, I find that to be an extremely challenging thing to do with writing, because it's easy to put people in a tree they can't get out of. But then you have to solve it. And I see
you have to come up with a satisfying way to get them out of it.
Surprising, but inevitable
right.
Answer to the question. And lots of movies nowadays, they screw it up. Like, I'll come back and bash on Superman, Man of Steel, as they make this impossible foe to defeat, and then their answer is just lots of destruction for the last 2/3 of the movie.
Right.
And it's boring and tedious. It doesn't really explain anything. And the Deus Ex Machina is another one that's important, where you have the answer come right at the end. And the simplest way to avoid that is you have to have the answer or all the tools or whatever clues provided by like by the 75% mark through the book.
Right.
Yeah.
No matter how good your twist is, if it comes later than that, it will feel like a cheap shot at the end. And that's one of the things Stephen King does wrong too, is he just dumps some shit at the end. If he would set that up so the characters kind of like go, oh shit, like in World War Z when he realizes, holy shit, this is a defense mechanism. That's why the people that aren't affected by the zombie virus in World War Z are people who are mortally ill, and the virus doesn't want that because they want to propagate. And once he figures that out, and it's exactly in a movie, it's in thirds, in books, it's in quarters, but at exactly the 2/3, I mean, like literally exactly at the 2/3 mark in World War Z is when he figures out the secret.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the movie is basically, I call the race to the finish.
Right.
And so that makes the endings feel much more satisfying.
With you, like on the flip side of that, you have the end of the Dark Tower where the character literally gets a pen and a paper and erases the bad guy with an eraser, and the book's over. And I'm like, come on, man.
If he had learned that's what he had to do when there was still some of the book left, like, okay, if I can get the magic eraser, then I do it. And then he has to go through the steps to get the eraser and fight the fight and learn how to use the eraser and deal with the overwhelming whatever consequences of it. And then finally does it at the end. Then it would probably be okay. But when you just show up on page 299 of 300, you're like, bye.
So I just watched a movie talking about this, kind of setting up this stuff. I just watched a movie called Coherence. And it's kind of an older movie, and I did some research on it, and it was filmed like on a $50,000 budget. It was filmed over 5 days, and it's a very small movie. And I guess for the majority of the lines, they were ad-libbed, most of the interactions between the characters, and I thought that was interesting. So I watched it, and it's basically about a comet that is super close to Earth, and that comet messes up like space-time continuum, gravity type stuff. It's like a deep quantum physics type of theory that's happening here, and it basically explores the multiverse and how this gravimetric distortion by this comet is basically kind of opening up this multiverse and basically putting them all in the same place. And there's a really cool story element that goes on to it where people are kind of, they're all in one house, and it deals with 5 or 6 characters, and some of the characters start going into different houses and interacting with people that are not from their reality. And it's really good. Anyway, I say that to say that the ending of this movie, it had like 2 twists, and it was so well done that you can't really do this with novels. And I don't want to spoil it, because if you want to watch it, I highly recommend watching it, because it has a great twist ending. The twist was so well done, like in short stories where you do an ending and you're kind of like leaving the reader hanging, but that's the point of the short story. You can't really do that in a novel. In this movie, that happened, and you're like, you have this, okay, what happened next? But they don't answer that. And it was really good. The acting was, it was okay. You could tell that some of the actors were not like A-list actors. Like there was a couple of B-C actors in there. You could tell some of the dialogue was kind of stilted a little bit, but knowing that, like going into it as a writer, knowing that they ad-lib most of the stuff, I could see that, and I was like, okay, that's cool that they did that. But still, the story was really good.
It says in the wiki, says, threw them a few red herrings and set them loose for 5 days, knowing that the film could evolve like great jazz, basically. So they're totally improvising, which, in most of the movies we watch, the reason they seem really natural is because they took 500 tries at it. Low budget, you get like 3 tries, and you better hope one of them's good.
Well, and one of the cool things too is a lot of dialogue, and we've talked about this before. And a lot of dialogue, you write how people want to speak, not how people actually
speak. Yeah, exactly.
And because how people actually talk is like, well, you want to, I told us, every time I talk to my wife, I'm like, hey, can you get the thing off the deal in there off that one thing? And she's like, she just looks at me like I'm just an idiot.
When they say,
yeah, but what's great is when you've been together so long, she knows exactly what you're talking about.
100%. She's like, ugh.
You can just grunt.
That was something I was explaining to my son when we were talking about one of his plays, and he was asking me about writing stuff, about writing people. And I'm like, son, I don't write about people. I write about characters. Characters are not people.
True.
Okay. People are way more confusing than characters. You know, fiction has to make sense or people won't like it. Real life doesn't. Real people are screwed up as hell, but characters, they kind of have to fill a certain role and fit into a certain mold for a story to work. You know, there is, and this comes back to that thing, people confusing, you know, fiction, you know, crafted fiction with chaotic reality. You know, some people have a hard time. They want things to make sense so bad that they latch on more to what's fictional that makes sense to them than what is actually happening in the world around them.
And I think there's several examples of where the randomness of actual real life have been done in film, but only a couple, like Pulp Fiction.
Yeah.
Like the Pulp Fiction, you never, like, it's never really
exactly
what's in the suitcase. It doesn't fucking matter. Like, it does not matter what's in the suitcase. It doesn't matter anything else. Like, you're just, and it's not linear. You know, there's no real explanation of anything. And you're just, at the end of the movie, nothing is solved. Nothing is really like learned or explored or anything like that. You're just watching kind of these people live their lives, and it's
really the only through line through that thing is Butch and Ving Rhames' character. I can't think of the name right now. You know, that's really because it wraps up when they sort of make peace after that horrific basement scene.
Right. Yeah. I'm gonna get medieval on that ass.
But yeah, but no, you're right, and that can be done. But even that, throughout it, you know, they were realistic characters, but they were still characters.
100%. Yeah.
You know, they had a certain presence and entertainment value that you just don't see in normal people.
Yeah.
You know, it's I mean, it is a fine line, but I think if you try to make something too real, you can kill it. I really do.
Tom Hoddle says, I get annoyed when people think my character beliefs are mine, especially when two characters contradict each other.
Oh God, yes.
Yeah. I don't understand. Like, it's crazy when I see writers that are so far away one direction. And like, as an author, I'm like, when you create a character, you're not just going to pour in your point of view into every character. So you've got to sit there and mentally have an exercise with, how is another character that doesn't believe the same way as I do, how are they basing that in their own reality? Like, you have to get into that mind to write from that point of view. So it's crazy to me when I see people, authors, like, kind of go off the deep end, like, how could people do this? I'm like, you have to do that for your characters. If you're not doing that for the characters, you're doing a disservice to the character and to the story.
Exactly.
Like Tom says, like, I write characters and I 100% put in their beliefs and their way of doing things and their way of thinking is not me. Like, it's not at all how I would react or how I would do things. But if I write every single character in the book that's like me, then the book is going to be super boring and annoying because you know what I mean?
And I think that's one of the reasons, my personal opinion, is that it's super important and super useful as a writer person that you can look at the world and try to understand everybody's points of view, no matter how much you disagree with it, simply because that's fuel for writing characters that aren't you.
Right.
You know, you've got to be able, even if you disagree with them, you have to be able to entertain their point of view and their way of thinking without it.
See it from their point of view.
Just to file it away so you can use it when you need it. You know, I think that's a vital thing.
Comedy. Good talk,
That's
man.
another good way to really dissatisfy your readers. And where I have seen people give really negative reviews is when they sense some sort of political message or
Oh yeah, don't
or
do that.
or political or religious or just some sort of moral lesson that they're trying to teach
Yeah.
you.
Right.
Trying to teach somebody through fiction is almost always a good way to
Don't
piss
don't
some
ever
people
beat your
off.
reader with the agenda stick. That never works.
That sucks. And even the best writers tend to slip into it once in a while.
Like the Ken Britt said,
He's not wrong.
95% pretending to be the character. It's funny that you said, because I mentioned the other day I was out dictating, and I was dictating an interesting scene, and I came up, I started approaching this woman that was pushing her kid in a stroller, and I just had to I had to stop talking, because in my head I was like, I was that character doing these things, and I was like, oh, I can't do that around real people.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like, pause. Hold on.
Yeah.
Hi, how's it going?
Yeah, hello, how are you? Yeah,
No,
I definitely
I'm not crazy.
pretending to be. I'm not actually a serial killer.
Not actually getting ready to kill like 15 people or torture them.
You know, it's interesting about the emotional thing, because when I first started, I was thinking about this the other day. When I first started writing, my focus in the manuscript was to Josh mumbling about his talking to his imaginary baby. That's true. Yep, I do that a lot. My focus used to be writing on action scenes, and like wanting to push a reader through the action scene, and like ramping up the tension like you would ramp up in an action movie, and have, the viewer is watching the car chase or whatever else, and there it's like so cool that they're like, oh, look at this, or like a Jackie Chan movie where you're watching the fight and you're like, oh, this is so cool that he did this or that or whatever. And now I try to do a lot of that like straight through dialogue, and like what I would have beforehand called like the boring parts of the book. That's where I try to push my engagement and the way that I want to push my reader through, because I want the reader to be engaged with that character, to know what's going to happen, not just having a good car chase through the middle of town. And because I used to like go for pages and pages and pages of like fighting and car scenes and gunshots and all this stuff.
You have to be careful though, because in our genre and stuff like that, sometimes that's what you got. That sometimes what they want, because I don't like to. It's not my favorite thing to write, is all the action beat stuff, and I tried to narrative summary some of that stuff, and I was going to escalate the scenes throughout the writing of the book. So like as the action got more intense, it'd be in more detail as it's more meaningful.
Right.
And the editors, this particular project, that went through lots of different, it's a long, sad story, but it eventually got done, but they were like, no, you have to show it. Military science fiction, they want to see the action.
Yeah, that's
all
what the
of it.
readers want in that.
I'm
Action,
like, oh,
adventure,
okay,
that
didn't
kind
know.
of stuff,
Which is
like the Gray Man books are a great example. I mean,
Yep.
they want to know what kind of ass he's kicking and how he's kicking.
Yeah,
it.
they want to know if he threw a right punch versus a knee to the
Yeah.
groin. That matters to them for some reason. For me, I if I ever fall asleep during an audiobook, it's usually during those action scenes. I'm like, they're still fighting. Oh God, they're still fighting.
Says Corey catches me making faces at the computer as I'm writing.
Yeah, I do that.
100%. 100%. Rinzor says, I have an older series with a minor character, a crazy college girl SJ Warrior type. One of my readers, upon seeing the character, assumed I would be pushing the SJ stuff and bailed and left a bad review. Yeah, that's the type of responses that like we've been talking about today. Like,
knee jerk, don't give it a chance. I mean,
I remember somebody leaving a response on one of Nick Cole's books, and Nick Cole is probably the one of the farthest right authors that I know.
You think?
And somebody like called him out and said, you're like some kind of SJW, like super liberal, pushing like hippie stuff. And I'm like, first of all, you don't even know Nick. Like, you have absolutely no deal. What's going on? But it wasn't about a
Yeah.
character that he
No.
wrote. It was his assumptions about the author, which I think was interesting, and I think that could be another.
Well, he does live in California, so it's
In and of
obviously completely true.
well, that's off. Well, yeah.
Yeah. Well,
I mean,
where
you
you
can
live
easily
defines
assume
you.
that.
You know. I mean, come on. Yeah, I got accused of being a misogynist in one of mine.
Really?
I think it was Awakened, but one of the main characters in there is a woman with a background of abuse and stuff like that.
Yeah.
From her brother, who she gets even with in epic ways. But yeah, I can't remember if it was a review or a Facebook. It was years ago when I first started putting stuff on KDP. But yeah, they basically just, called me a woman hating misogynist, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, you can ask my daughters about that if you want. I mean,
Yeah.
Well, I'm
Ask
glad
him who
that-
actually knows me. That's not true.
Because there's that actor that's in the new Dune movie that all but said she thought that the Dune books were really sexist, but she'd never read them.
yeah.
And you're like, come on now, people I think go overboard with their criticisms sometimes, and
Yeah, and those aren't readers. Those are angry internet trolls.
Those are people just
Don't need to
looking
worry
for an
about them.
excuse to spout their opinions to the world so they can feel heard.
Rick
Even
said,
though nobody cares.
writing interesting fight scenes is the hardest part of wring.
When you've done hundreds of them, it's hard to keep
100.
them. It's like, how can I make this new and fresh after I've done it like literally 100 times?
New to them, that could be true, but once you've done it a few times, it's really just.
I think if I've outlined enough of the fight ahead of time, it's easy to write. But like you said, Scott, I think it is kind of tough to keep it fresh, and you're especially like gun battles, like really close quarters, like hand to hand, like throwing each other across tables or through walls or something like
John Wick type shit.
Yeah, sometimes that's a little easier than doing like gun battles where you're talking about like squads of people fighting it, because there's only so many times you could do an execution.
Ken Britz has the solution right there. Just right, bang, bang, bang.
Oh yeah.
This guy shot that guy won. That guy died.
Yeah. No, that's my thing is I'll write those scenes, and I just feel, since I've written so many, and essentially an action scene's an action scene,
Right.
you're trying to make it fresh and surprising and new and all that stuff. And I'll get done with it and I'll just be like, oh, this is going to be the one where they realize I suck. But then I'll read it like, for example, I started listening to the entire Last Reaper series recently, and I hadn't even read it or listened to it for like over a year. And now I listen to it, and I have some of the moments you listen to it and you're like, oh, you're an idiot, Moon. What the fuck did you do there? But a lot of times I'll be listening to them like, holy shit, did I write this?
Yeah.
This is fucking fun. And so a lot of that is what we were talking about before in another podcast about where you lose perspective and you get to that stage in your book where you think everything sucks.
Yeah.
And stuff like that, but it doesn't. That's the thing, is it's not that much different than anything else you wrote,
right?
But it's just part of the natural cycle. It's like sleeping and being awake. You go through a natural cycle, and sometimes you're tired and sometimes you're not. When you write, sometimes you feel like, I'm the best writer there ever is. I love this. I could do this for a living. And then you get to the point where you're like, everything's wrong. I can't believe I'm doing this.
Right.
I'm never going to get this done. And then, but when you come back to it later, you're like, hey, I like it. It's fun. See, I did put the work into it.
Brendan asked a question that's slightly off topic, but I think it's interesting because I want to talk about it. Does anyone else notice themselves accidentally doing voices or changing their tone of voice when dictating?
What do you mean?
Well, what are you talking about? It's interesting that he says this because I just thought about this the other day. I was driving around Claflin and I was voice dictating, and a lot of times, like I'll do it like on a monotone, and I've got to I pause for a minute and I think about what I'm going to say, and then while I was dictating the scene, I actually got like amped up, and it was funny because I was getting amped up, but like while I was talking, I'm like, go fuck yourself, but then I was like coming back down, I'm like, end quote. And then like,
period.
Come on, that just means you're getting into it, man. Because I do the same thing at the keyboard. I'll be typing and I'm like, and that fuck you.
Yeah, I have found that, especially when I'm using Dragon Anywhere, because it doesn't voice learn, that the more steady I hold the mic, the better my audio environment is, and the more I talk like this when I write period, paragraph, the better it transcribes. And they say speak naturally. That's complete bullshit.
Yeah,
You
speak like
pick it
a
up the machine, you talk to it like it's a machine, and you get better accuracy on your words.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Also, I found I can't remember if I talked about it here on the show or in our writers meeting, but if you ever do get into dictating, there's a great book Kevin J. Anderson and somebody else wrote on dictating. But I found that there was a specific setting for dictation when you're transcribing that you can turn off the voice to text, or not the voice to text, but voice activation, because it was turned on somehow.
I hate that.
I was walking around. I did probably about an hour of dictation, and it was probably like 2,000 words. But because it was sound activated, my voice would start, but then the recording wouldn't start until like halfway through the word. So then the transcription, somehow the setting got changed like during the recording, because like half of it was like words that I wasn't saying and they didn't make any sense, and it was like ant from chair upside down. I'm like, what in the hell was I talking about? And then I go and listen to it, and you can see where the sound picks up and starts. So I made that adjustment. So if you're ever going to dictate, make sure it's not on voice activation. There you go. On Being a Dictator by Kevin J. Anderson and somebody else.
I like what Patricia Gillum said. Still waiting for Dragon Southern Edition. Y'all get in the spaceship.
That would be so cool. Different accents while you're talking, and then the transcription program like recognizes the accent and then automatically does what you're saying.
That would be pretty excellent. Yeah.
I think that regional accents probably do, because I wonder where they invented it and what they use as the template, because there's lots of things that I use when I dictate a lot. It doesn't get it. My dictation cannot tell the difference between the word and in for me. It never gets it right. There's a bunch of words like that. Or I'm trying to think of another ones, like it'll come out like alrighty or something, and it's not like
right.
Use something else. It's just, it's kind of goofy, but
well, hey, great conversation. Good show, everyone. Thank you guys for coming and hanging out with us. Really active chat today in the show, which I always appreciate. Talking amongst the three of us is always fun, but when we can talk a lot with the people that are watching, that's what makes the show super duper fun. And thank you everybody for coming and hanging out with us today. Man, I had a great show.
Yeah, I enjoyed it, guys.
I think next time we should just talk like in action beats the entire thing. Yeah,
100%. If you're listening on the audio podcast, you need to know we have a live YouTube podcast, or it's on Facebook. Just search Keystroke Medium. That's how you find us. We're the only one that is there. Subscribe. If you're watching on YouTube, like the video. Believe it or not, that actually helps us get some visibility. And if you have any thoughts about our next show or what you want to talk about in the future, either leave a comment on this video on YouTube or hop over to Facebook to the company Facebook group, and you can leave a note there. And man, if it's a good topic, we'll talk about it all day long. Everybody,
at least an hour,
or at least an hour, and usually on Mondays at 2 p.m. ish.
Usually.
Plus or minus 3 days and 2 hours.
Thank you all for coming and hanging out with us today. We'll be back next Monday-ish. We're going to talk about some reading. We're going to talk about some writing, and, of course, everything in between right here on Keystroke Medium. Peace.